React Router. Anybody ever used a web framework that has routing in it before? Yeah, what have you used? Ruby on Rails has routing. What does routing do?
It's where you link the URL to where you're going to go, or like what the web page is going to render.
Yeah, so you remember the first day we had our little illustration of the laptop with a bunch of arrows going to a big question mark in the cloud. We said, who knows what's going on over there? It could be anything. It could be as simple as taking the path that you typed in and finding that file and sending it back. Or it could be running an application and determining from that what files it actually needs to load and execute, what methods it needs to run, and what classes, and so on. And routing is more the latter. What we've been doing so far is totally static sites with no routing. Now, the routing we're going to do is actually happening on the client side, not in the server. But what it is doing is just what Sam described that Rails does, basically. So who knows how to read? Go for it.
JavaScript package.
What? What's a JavaScript package?
React Router is
Oh.
JavaScript package that allows our UI to stay in sync with the URL. It allows us to render specific components based on which routes match the current URL or don't match.
Yeah. So keeping the URL in sync with the UI. These are single-page apps that we build with React. So there's really only ever one actual page, index.html. But we could update the URL when we change components and so on. And we could use the URL to determine which component should be preloaded if you go straight to a deep link. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with a router. To get started, you just add it to your project with yarn add or npm install. React Router DOM is the package we add. Again, React can be React Native as well, so we add specifically React Router DOM. And then when we have that one line in index.js that replaces the empty element in our HTML with our React component, instead of just putting app in there now, we'll wrap app inside this router component that is provided by React Router. And then we just define routes. And here's what they look like. So the top simply says, if the path you've browsed to is /widgets, load the widgets component. There are two basic ways that we can define routes. One is with that component prop, where we just tell it what component should render. And the other is with an actual render method being passed in. And then you could just put some JSX inside a callback. The advantage there is you could pass in props, right? You can't pass props in the first example. You're just naming the component that should show up. But if you can actually type some JSX in there, you can pass props along to it. You can also do a lot more complicated stuff than just rendering a component. So sometimes you need to use a render method instead of just specifying a component to load. You'll notice one other difference between these two routes. The second one says exact. So that first one would match /widgets /44 or /widgets /pancakes or whatever. As long as it starts /widgets, it's going to match that route. That second one, however, because it says exact path equals /stuff, would not match /stuff /86. It would just match exactly /stuff. So we'll see plenty of examples like this. And then once we have this, we can actually just use links to get from one route to another. The React Router package, however, includes components for links, two of them, link and navlink. The difference between the two, either syntax-wise, they're very similar to just normal ahref type links, except you say link to instead of ahref. The difference between link and navlink is that navlink will also add an active class to the element if you are currently on that page. which is something you want to do a lot of times so that you can highlight the current page in the menu, for example, or display it differently somehow so that they know they're already on the page. So use navlink when you want that to happen, and it'll just add the class for you, and then it's still up to you to style it. It's not going to automatically add some sort of effect to it, but it will automatically add a class named hover. And if you do need to change that class to something else, there's an extra prop you can throw in there to do that. Now, an example I used a minute ago was like /widgets/44. The idea being, well, from Rails routes, what am I probably meaning when I say that?
Can you repeat what you?
Like I gave the example in the previous slide. There's /widgets. What about /widgets/44 or something? What would you think I meant by that?
It's a route within the other route.
That's all right. Yeah. So if you think of sites that you visit sometimes, you'll see, heck, like Twitter, a link to a specific tweet has some big long number in it, right? It has an identifier for the specific tweet you're trying to get to. So you could do something like that. You could have /messages that takes you to a list of all the messages. Or you could have /messages/44, which takes you specifically to the message with the ID of 44. But you can do things like that. And you do that by passing in params. So you don't have a route for /messages/44 and another route for /messages/45 and all the other possible IDs that you could ever have, right? That just doesn't make any sense. So you would have it match something like /messages, but then you need to be able to get that ID out of the URL. And for that, you have params. So if you define your route, as we did up above, where it says :name, so that's a param. That's a route param. And then inside user about, where that points, you can get to that param through a prop. So React Router passes along some props to every component that you navigate to it using React Router. Location, match, and history, as we'll see. So the match prop that it passes in the example below, you'll see props.match.params.name. So any params you have will be keys within props.match.params. And in the example above, we link to the about route or the user about component with the link /about/Bob. So in that example, user about would print, this is a page about Bob. So whatever matches that portion of the URL, and it knows it's a param because of the colon, is going to be available to us through that prop. Did I accidentally hit the thing? I did. So I also mentioned history. So sometimes you need to navigate to another page without the user actually clicking on a link. For example, perhaps you've just created a new room and you want each room in your chat room to have a different URL. Like you want /general/random, etc. Maybe after you create a new room, you automatically want to navigate to that room. So you would not have them actually clicking on a link to do that. You would just do it automatically when they finish adding the room. So for that sort of situation, the history object is very handy. And this is based on the HTML5 history object, which is something you can use anyway on any page. But this API uses that under the hood, unless you specify that it shouldn't, and lets us actually change the browser history so the back button doesn't break and all that kind of stuff. So we can actually push new URLs onto the stack. So there are a bunch of methods on that object, including push, which adds a new URL to the user's history. Go back does just what it sounds like. It is the equivalent of hitting the back button. Go forward is the equivalent of hitting the forward button. Go and you pass in a number, takes you that many levels back. So you could go, say, 3 items back in the history. Block isn't one you're likely to use a whole lot, but it kind of does what it sounds like. So that is a quick overview of React Router. pretty easy to use most of the time. We're going to have a little bit of trickiness here, but it's going to be good. So are you ready?